right.
the heads up.
Well, heads up is now because we're live, Brad. What's up, everybody? Dan, Tom here. You've seen me from MMA Junkie or the Action Network. This, is on my YouTube channel. Will be, of course, on the Protect Your Neck podcast, the show I host. A little bit of a new content here, doing a bit of a MMA rewind. We're still working out the TM, so to speak. But I got a co-host here, my man Brad Taschuk, Brad Taschuk in the house. He's been on here before for recaps of sort. But this is a different recap, Brad. We're kind of revisiting our old school roots, if you will. If I dare say old school. It's 15. I mean, this one was, 15 years ago?
Yeah, 15 years ago last week. So it definitely qualifies as old school. I think that's vintage in today's kids' terms.
Yeah, absolutely, man, absolutely. Just curious, Brad, we're professional here. Are you using the AirPods for your microphone as well? I hear you fine. Yeah. I'm just making sure that's what you intended to use. I just want to make sure. I hear you okay, though.
Sure is.
All right.
Okay, good.
As long as you guys hear us okay in the chat, feel free to jump along. I don't know how much of this is, live, Brad, with your podcast that you do. Shout out to the MMA Analysis. Speaking of OG podcasts right there. You guys, have been dabbling, doing the live stuff for a minute now, so perhaps you're used to it. But for something like this, I don't know. Does it make sense that we're doing it live? I mean, we're doing it live, clearly, but I don't know. Hopefully you guys let us know what you think. But Brad, does this kind of make sense we're going live here for this?
Yeah, I think so. You tweeted it out. You let the people know if they want to hop in here. I'm sure we'll timestamp the card as we start to go live here. But maybe if we just mention that we're going to be talking about the UFC Fight Night 13, unlucky 13, but worked out pretty well in this instance. Florian versus Lauzon. If you guys want to cue that up in the old Fight Pass machine, you can maybe even join along with us as we watch this thing happen.
Absolutely. I had the graphic up earlier. We have UFN, UFC Fight Night 13. It wasn't before they did the UFC on Foxes, before the UFC on ESPNs. It was pretty much like just one name. It would be like UFC Fight Night 13, Florian versus Lauzon. That's how I'll be titling it. But remember those names, Brad, when it was like just pretty much one name?
Well, these were like the change of pace sort of cards, right? Because it was pay-per-view, and then like every 3 or 4 pay-per-views, you'd get one of these mixed in at this point. So these were the change of pace. These were the free cards. They were novel to us at the time, and I'm sure we'll get into a few more notes about this one. But yeah, it was easier to keep track of back then, that's for sure.
Absolutely. Again, hopefully you guys are all hearing us okay and whatnot. When we go live, Brad's a pro. He's actually running video separate on a separate device. My device I usually use separate is not here right now, and boy, the TV in my office is not great. Gonna have to change it out. So I'm actually gonna be running from my own device here. I got really good internet, and I've been able to get away with it before. So we're gonna knock on wood. And hopefully, it's doable both for the live viewers and just for the recording. If for whatever reason, it's terrible or whatever, let us know. Now I invited the troll, I'm sure, and I always say that, but people are pretty cool in this channel, Brad, to be honest. But yeah, any feedback you guys want to give, and we're going to be going off of Fight Pass. Don't worry, you still got a few minutes. We're going to be laying out some context, but just to let you know, yes, UFC Fight Night 13, we're going to be going off the UFC Fight Pass recording streams. For these ones, it just shows Kenny Florian like it's the actual fight, but you got to look at the time. Should be an hour and 52-minute run time. So hopefully we won't take too much setting it up. But again, this is going down on April 2nd, 2008. I was just a younger lad myself. I don't remember too much of this year, Brad. This was the first year I stopped being Shavit, needless to say. Do you remember much year 2008?
2008 would have been my final year of university, so that would have been an interesting time for me as well. I think this would have been just about the, I don't want to say the peak of my MMA fandom, because I feel like the peak was a plateau for several years, but this was certainly at the start of that plateau. This would have been about 4 or 5 months after I went to my first ever UFC card, which was UFC 79. So I was in it deep at this point in my UFC fandom.
Wow, that is. I remember UFC 79, but I don't think I was going to live events quite yet. I don't remember my first live event. They were all like amateur fights or like Strike Force fights, but like both those actually had like Ronda Rousey at it, for example, because I'm in Vegas, so I was a bit spoiled, even though I wasn't able to go to the big cards, or didn't make it to the big cards, I should say. But yeah, that's a great timestamp, and you know, again here, something I wanted to do, by the way, event info, of course, like I said, April 2nd, 2008, of course, Broomfield Event Center, Colorado. UFC comes back to Colorado as the graphic that you've seen used and will be used for this show, because I guess they haven't been back since, you know, the old school days, right? This is where the first UFC took place, and that was a big selling point of it. Another big selling point, which of course, you could look this up for yourself, but why do that? You have us here, and this is something that Brad actually mentioned before we went to the show. But Brad, what was the change up on this show that was notable to these spoiled multi-streaming? We can watch all the fights no matter how bad the card format is these days, fans. Can you explain what the card formats were like and why this card is significant?
So first of all, prelims didn't exist. That wasn't a thing. The only way you got a prelim on a card is if there were a bunch of quick finishes and they could fit one in on the pay-per-view or something like that. It's the only way you're getting any of the prelims. There was no Facebook. They were just getting around to the Spike TV stuff at this point, I think, although that might not have even been in play yet. But this was the first free card that went to a 3-hour runtime. And that was because of nerds like us on forums petitioning to have this card lengthened out a little bit more than the standard 2-hour 4-fight main card. And I mean, 15 years later, sometimes I wish we could go back to a 4-fight main card and shorten things up a little bit, because a lot of them don't deserve it. But back in this time, it was very welcome to expand the main card to 6 fights, go 3 hours, and we were eating it up.
Yeah, absolutely. When they said the term dark fights, they really meant it. Though, the good news was, I believe they put one of the... So we're not going to go back and watch all the fights from the prelims, but if you were to pick one fight from this prelim card, I believe it's actually included in the broadcast, and if not, we will definitely make a special pit stop to watch it. It's not very long, and yeah, that would be... Anthony Johnson versus Tommy Spear. I won't mention much more of that. Also on the prelims, you got you've got Josh Neer and versus Din Thomas, Marcus Aurelio. No, not the guy from Gladiator. Versus Ryan Roberts, Manville the Anvil Gambarian. I believe he's a recent Tough winner, or a Tough loser, I should say, a finalist to Nate Diaz, who was also on the card. Of course, Manville faces Jeff Cox, Clay Guida, Sammy Schiavo. George Soteropoulos, who apparently is making a comeback, which should be weird. He fought Roman Michian. Anything of note on those prelims there, Brad?
The only thing that I can maybe point to is I feel like at the time the Marcus Aurelio submission, which that might have snuck on the main card as well, just because that was real quick. I think that might have been the fastest legitimate submission in UFC history. May still be, but it's certainly very close. That one was over extremely fast in the first round. We're not counting some of the shenanigans that went on in early UFCs with teammates fighting each other and that sort of stuff. But I think this was, if it's not the fastest, it's certainly still top 5 to this day.
Sure, absolutely. Yeah. There are some records here. And by the way, as far as records go, we didn't try to timestamp these things like the top 5 episodes too much. But obviously you can see the record or the production date on whatever medium you're viewing this, and you can deduce the time at which we are recording. And yes, UFC 287 just happened, and there was a record, what was it, $11.7 million gate. I bring that up to say the gate was... For Broomfield here, the attendance, by the way, 6,742. Total gate, $750,429. Now, in the UFC's defense, if I dare say, the Fight Night bonuses, I know they haven't changed in forever, but this was actually back when it was still $20,000. So, I don't know how much the numbers adjust. They never adjust fairly when we do the math, but just to let you know what we're working with for this time period. And
there was a point in time where finances actually did increase for fighters.
Yeah.
Again, looking at modern day, a little bit different, but this was when things were still on the rise.
Yes, absolutely. And lastly but not least, I wanted to kind of shoehorn a bit of a segment in here I was talking to Brad about before we started. Shout out to Mark Fellows in the chat. Feel free to like the videos and jump in. It's a loosey goosey format here. We're just having fun on these shows, man. I'm gonna be cracking one open soon here and switching from coffee to beer. But one of the podcasts I like, I want to shout out them. Pod Yourself, The Wire. They recap one of my favorite TV or HBO, however you want to say it, series, right? The Wire, of course. But they go back essentially, like you're serving here, and before they go, they kind of lay the table what was going on at the time of the episode, kind of like called, the Wayback Machine, they call it, Machine tells the tale, son. And I just want to kind of timestamp a couple of fun things that were going on in April of 2008, just to kind of bring us back to that period. So if you're nostalgic like us and you were watching it live, what we're about to get to in a minute will be all the nostalgia you need. But just a reminder, President George W. Bush was still the president of the United States. Barack Obama was not yet the president. The elections would take place later that year, of course, in November. And Obama would not be inaugurated till 2009. But we were below you up north there in Canada where Brad is. Not to get too centric, but across the pond over in Ireland, I know we usually use that term for England, but they're not too far from there. Their prime minister, actually, on this very day, April 2nd, was asked to step down for some political shadiness that took place in the 90s. Of course, Ireland has some crazy history and historical stuff that happened and continued up until the 90s. I'm not someone to go into it, but I'm just saying it's for you history nerds out there. Jay-Z and Beyonce, left turn. They got married in April of 2008, Brad. You remember that? That was like Bennifer. That was like the second coming of Bennifer, I guess. I don't know. I don't remember it either. I do remember Jay-Z. This tracks, though, because I worked at the Wynn Casino, Encore Casino, actually. They just built the Encore. And they had the $1 million Whales Club private casino upstairs, right? And I remember Jay-Z rented it out one time, and Beyonce was pretty pissed that he was up there losing his ass. Yeah, I can say that much, right? I don't work there. 10 years have passed. But yeah, that makes sense. He was married to Beyonce.
No,
Affliction.
It's never
well,
made
yeah,
sense.
I guess. I guess. Affliction, and I wrote Affliction and studded jeans that we make fun of. These were actually in style right now at this time, by the way, folks. Like, this is fully in. Like, dudes with dad bods and power bellies are living their best life, throwing Affliction shirts on and studded jeans and going to the clubs and partying. It is madness here, at least in Vegas, what the style is.
Not even just Vegas. That was everywhere at the time.
God.
I think I managed to avoid most of that, but I've got some fashion from back in the time period. We got the In Spirit,
nice
hardcore MMA company for the folks.
I haven't seen that in forever. Yeah. I haven't seen that in forever. And I don't know if you want to segue to shorts, but I think the Affliction stuff I was guilty of at the time, and I was guilty of a lot of fashion stuff, folks, so I'm not coming off a high horse. But I think I just had like some really broed out, artsy looking, they look like, I think they were meant to be fight shorts, but like, even I knew back then, I'm like, these aren't fight shorts. I'm going to the pool in these things or something if I have to go like somewhere public, I guess. And I still never wore them. Because I'm like, these are, even then I was like, these are a bit much. I don't know if I could pull these off.
Yeah, I've got, I'm not going to stand up and model them too much, but I went digging through the closet. I found the old Dan Henderson clinch gear shorts. Haven't worn these since the last time I did a no-gi class, so they've been collecting some dust, folks.
Nice. I used to have the clinch gear ones where it was the black with the neon green or whatever trim. It just really popped. It was like one of his early ones.
Yeah, these are just black on gray. Very, very tame.
Awesome.
But they got the job done.
Awesome. I'm not sure what movies were out or what won Best Picture this year. I didn't get enough time to prep that much. I'm not sure who won the Super Bowl. Feel free to add in the chat. February just happened, right?
I looked that one
Brad?
up.
All right, who do we got?
New York Giants over the Patriots.
Oh, was
so
that
I think that may have been the undefeated year that was not to be.
Yeah, that was. I remember I was working valet at the time, like I was for a lot of these UFC events. So it was just, the guys on our early editions of our phone, whoever, knew how to look up and was savvy enough to look it up on the phone before it was easy for everybody to do it, like dummies like me. Yeah, we were checking scores and stuff, and wasn't it a fourth quarter fumble or interception, if you will? Definitely some type of folly.
Yeah, that was the helmet
epic
catch and all that sort of stuff,
right? Yeah. Yeah, people were losing their mind, and I remember that. Wow. So hopefully that kind of a little bit of we'll get better at these as we get along, but just to kind of set the stage and rounding it back to this event and MMA, I believe our champion. We have to double check these, even though we know, just because the dates start to get jumbled. But yeah, as far as heavyweight goes, heavyweight was in a weird flux. This is a point where, if you're asking me, Randy Couture is still the champ, baby. Damn the man, save the empire. But of course, I believe it was January just of this year, Tim Sylvia faced Antonio Rodrigo Nogueira. Of course, the Pride merger, and a lot of those contracts were already purchased. Rampage was already the champion at this point, but yeah, just January of this year, Minotauro does that beautiful trap, lets Tim Sylvia get up and guillotines him. What was it, UFC? Was that UFC 91 or something? Or 81? I should say 81. Yeah, 81. Yeah. My mistake. And gets the interim title. Of course, Rampage won it off of Dan Henderson the year before. I was just telling Brad that I was still in a band at that point, and I was doing a fest in Arizona. At the day of that fight, and I asked the crowd, because, a front man with the mic, I was like, all right, who you guys got? Hendo versus Rampage, and it was just dead silent, because just like now, Dan Tom, you guessed it, he did not know his audience. Yeah, no one in the punk rock was watching the MMA there, unless it was the lead singer from Converge. That guy did a lot of work for MMA stuff. But yeah, Dan Henderson, of course, lost. Rampage would lose later this year. He didn't lose yet. That was to Forrest Griffin by leg kicks, if you guys remember that decision. Of course, the middleweight champion was still Anderson Silva. I'm not sure where his defenses were at. He didn't, face the Talis Leitez's of the world, but he was
this card happened right after the second Franklin fight.
Wow, yes, we're still pretty early on in the Silva's career as well. Welterweight, of course, it is not George St. Pierre, believe it or not. We are very close to him getting it back, but Matt Serra is the champion, right, Brad?
Matt Serra is the champion. GSP was the interim champion at this point. The aforementioned UFC 79, he took the interim title over Matt Hughes in their rubber match. But he didn't get the chance to get his revenge on Matt Serra quite yet. That happens about 3 weeks from what we're about to watch.
Wow. BJ Penn is still the champion. I don't know. I don't know if he already. I think he is getting ready to face Sean Shirk.
Yeah, that would be his next one. Yeah.
Sean Shirk, you dead? And we don't have to worry about featherweight because those didn't exist in the UFC, folks. Bantamweight. Who was the women's champ, Brad?
What? What's that?
Exactly. I don't even think Ronda Rousey fought here in Tough Enough yet, by the way, folks, at this point. So, I mean, this is kind of how far back we are. So, context is set. What's up?
This is still Dana's very much women will never fight in the UFC age.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Brad, I'm pretty much queued up to 000 on that 152 event, folks at home. If you guys want to queue up, people listening in the future, who it's mainly for. I know we're going live here to see how it goes live, but yeah, we'll Brad, let me know when you're queued up. Where it's the black screen with the
I'm ready to go whenever you are.
All right, folks listening live and in the future. Well, first let me crack one open. I got a rogue beer here. I gotta tease you guys here. There you go. Let me crack this open for you. Check. Beers, snacks, adult snacks or not, up to you folks. All right, nice. I'll wait for Brad to get a nice solid pour in because he's a man of class and culture. We'll be on our way.
There we go.
All right, UFC Fight Night 13, Florian versus Lauzon on UFC Fight Pass, 1 hour and 52 minutes at the 0:00:00:00 all zero markers. Okay, 3, 2, 1. Oh, sorry, 1 second. I'll pause it up there. Oh, there we go. 1 second. All right, sorry. 3, 2, 1, and play.
Kenny Florian is gonna be the guy that fights for the title, which he already was at this point, wasn't he?
Yep. Yeah. He was on his way. Having a bit of a delay on mine, but I'll catch up, or I'll resync here in a second.
We've got the classic, beautiful intro where you get 2 seconds of highlights for everybody on the main card, and not even the whole main card. I don't think we'll see, because we didn't. I don't think there was a whole lot for good old Kurt Pellegrino there.
Oh, nice. It's going to be, the good thing about it playing here is it's going to be playing in my ear. Hopefully once I get started for me, we can just sync up and just get rolling here. But yeah, it's the classic Gladiator intro is what's going on. You got a young Kenny Florian. I don't think they do everybody through the main card, but at least the top 2 people, I believe.
Joe Lauzon storming onto the scene with his knockout of Jens Pulver.
That's right.
Shocked the world at the time.
Absolutely. So I may have to do a backup plan here, which is fine. But I may have to just watch from a different device, which is my phone. Don't have the working TV or a tablet with me, so it's all good. We can at least keep the live going and ensure that actually is a better quality recording and stream. So I will, my neck is honestly kind of cricked funny anyways, because I usually have the iPad to the right, so when I'm doing the live commentaries like last night, I'm always kind of looking off anyways, so no one needs to be looking at me, and that I'm used to it. It shouldn't matter, right, Brad?
It shouldn't. If they're doing what I was doing last night, they're tuning into the live commentary and just having that on in an earbud while I was watching the fights, then it should be all good. We've got Mike Goldberg with pre-frosted tip Mike Goldberg going on here, and Joe Rogan, who is on has some hair and doesn't appear to be on all of the HGH in human history.
Yeah, I watched just the very intro and then stopped it, but so I can still comment as hopefully you task the burden while I catch up on my phone and keep the audience abreast. But yeah, Rogan is talking, and you could tell he's even back then he's kind of getting to the stage where he's like, he's saying the same things, and he's like, all right, do we really have to be doing the me and Dana White pay-per-view thing for a fight night? But this is kind of the era where we're at. We're not as saturated, even though maybe some of the broadcast is feeling it. Either that or Rogan was partying late last night.
Yeah, I'm sure the bars in Broomfield, Colorado really felt the brunt of 2008 Joe Rogan.
Right? Yes, yeah, absolutely. We used to always joke, like, oh, Joe Rogan looks like he was on coke, like me and my friends in like the early UFC days. That was always like the low-hanging fruit joke. Like, oh, he looks like he's wired.
We've got they're actually talking about the opening fight within the first 4 minutes of the broadcast. A couple highlights from Nate Diaz, and not a whole lot from Kurt Pellegrino, because as solid of a fighter as he was, not the most explosive guy in the world.
I was a low-key Batman Pellegrino fan, and I'm not going to disagree, by the way. not a crazy highlight reel, folks, but like I was just remembered his fight with Alberto Crane where he got a hole kicked through his mouth. There was literally his tooth kicked a hole through his mouth, and he just kept fighting and was like dogging it and like just grappling him like doggedly, and like I don't know, he just was one of those guys that was just a wild man. Like I loved me some Batman Pellegrino. So him facing Nate Diaz was tough for me because I think I was liking Nate Diaz at this point. But Brad, I actually was not a Nick Diaz fan at first, right? I just remember that, his fight with like Sean Shirk and like flipping off the crowd. Not that I was a big Shirk fan, but I was like, who is this guy? It wasn't until I got to know the Diazes, but I do remember looking very much to this fight. Where's your broadcast at right now, Brad? I know they've been doing highlight packages.
Exactly 5 minutes. I just had Nebraska is in the building.
Yes.
I mean, Nebraska might not have a long stay in the building, but it's there for now. But we're at 5:10, 11, 12 on my broadcast.
Okay, 146, 143. I'm trying to do the math backwards there, so I'm a little ahead of you, but in the same, because I'm getting James Irvin highlights going back and forth between Irvin and Houston Alexander, who are also fighting on this main card here.
Yep, same thing. Well, I can skip ahead for when we're in the, about to have the bell ring or something like that. But,
well, you press play when I said, so we'll go
off
off your timing. We'll go off your timing because you still press play when I gave the timestamp, and I'll fill you guys with timestamps after me and Brad get synced in, if that's cool.
Yeah, we'll get synced for the first fight, but until then, lots of as not necessarily highlight reel prevalent Kurt Pellegrino was. James Irvin and Houston Alexander were about the exact opposite in their careers.
Yeah, this was very interesting. By the way, let me know when the tail of the tape shows up for you, and that's where I'm paused waiting for you.
Awesome.
It's going to fold down from top to bottom, the graphic, but it'll be the tail of the tape graphic. It'll be their version of it from back then.
Just came down. There we go.
Okay. And mine's still playing. It's still showing the graphic. Still showing the graphic. Still showing the graphic. Once the fight starts, well, maybe not for this fight. Spoiler alert. But once the fight starts, we get a round clock and fade it out. Yeah. We're within a second, so we should be good. All right, they're announcing the first fight. Of course, kicks off with the big guys. I know I always said Joe Silva, would start with lightweights or featherweights, and I know this bout order got kind of shifted around, and there's also a decent amount of big guys, and it still ends up being a great card format. It's a positive spoiler alert. That's all I'll say. We had a nice pace one for you, starting with James Irvin getting counted in now. They just showed his sign. He's bouncing around. I'm not sure what he's coming off of, but after this, folks, is when he faces Anderson Silva for the impromptu Spike TV counter programming of Affliction Band.
What a time to be alive as an MMA fan.
Absolutely. Houston Alexander, of course, recently made a big storm on the scene. I'm sure Brad remembers that. UFC.com used to have this, like, the light heavyweight division was stacked, but it still wasn't that big, so they had a graphic that was like a circular gladiator graphic. It was like a really impressive Flash HTML deal. And Houston Alexander was one of the guys they were pushing because he came out of nowhere and knocked out, Keith Jardine and some other guys he wasn't necessarily supposed to beat.
Keith Jardine, you can see the fans are there. Nebraska is in the building. James Irvin, Irvin, sorry. Very weird. Like, he's got that like Benson Henderson tube body shape. It's quite interesting.
He is. Remember when he cut to 185? He looked like an alien. It was one of the worst weight cuts, and the fight is over with one Superman punch, and he's out. James Irvin beats Dwayne Ludwig at this point for the new knockout record, Brad. Dwayne Ludwig previously had it before this point, and now James Irvin, I believe, has it.
And Houston Alexander is doing his best Santiago Ponce. Oh, sorry, I don't want to timestamp it too much because of recent events, but getting up and immediately protesting the stoppage where he was very clearly out cold.
Absolutely. I'm sure Joe Rogan is going into his Dwayne Ludwig histrionics. I was trying to turn it up here a little bit to hear, but this was I don't know who breaks it after this, Brad and Chad. If you know, feel free. I'll throw it in the chat. But at this point, we have a new record holder throughout all divisions, which is only 5 divisions at this point. But for fastest knockout in the UFC.
Dwayne Ludwig still got screwed out of that because like the clock kept running after his knockout, and it added a few extra seconds. But was it Masvidal that broke this record, or was there somebody before that?
I think there was someone before that. There might have been even 2 names before that. A lot of time, Pat. I get a lot of time between this event and when we're recording, folks. And by the way, for those listening that are madmen like me, to where even if it's analysts and even if it's people that you respect, you're still too lazy to go sync it up and you just listen it in the background. Basically, James Irvin was dancing on the outside, and as Houston Alexander came in to throw a right hand, James Irvin threw a punch that you don't see much now, Brad. Where has it gone? But the Superman punch, very much in vogue, and gets the win here.
Yeah, as we have mentioned a couple times, GSP, probably the Supermaniest punch of all time in MMA. That dude used to throw it out in all sorts of combinations and made it work. But we've got Bruce Buffer announcing the victory for James Irvin at this point. 8 seconds of the first round, and go ahead.
Look at Buffer. Have some self-respect for yourself, Buff. What, a regular tie with just some pinstripes? That's all you brought to the table back then, Buff? Come on. Just kidding.
He couldn't hit up the local carpet land to find some curtains to turn into a suit for this one, I guess.
That's right. That's right. I guess. And by the way, Rogan with hair doing the post-fight interview here. I'm being cheeky with the volume a little bit. I don't think we'll get flagged. I don't think YouTube will be tuned for the UFC Fight Night 13 algorithm, Brad. So I'm gonna turn up a little bit. James Irvin wants to go to the parking lot to do it again to appease the crowd. Joe Rogan tells him there's no need.
I don't know. Yeah, I don't know what else you could possibly.
Oh, they said he tied it.
That.
I'm sorry, folks. He tied it 8 seconds. But again, Dwayne Ludwig histrionics to Brad's point and Rogan's point. Yeah. So he tied it 8 seconds. 8-second knockout. Tied for the fastest UFC history at this point in 2008.
That man has if you're not familiar with James Irvin, never was an outstanding fighter, but certainly an incredible highlight reel that he put together. And, the Terry Martin flying knee, one of the, at the time, probably scariest aftermath of a knockout ever, because Martin was out hard after that one. But yeah, that's a very physically gifted fighter, just never the top elite sort of guy. So he's the type of guy that gets forgotten by history. Absolutely. And I'm sure he did some bad shit in his life. That's probably why we don't talk about him anymore.
Yeah. There's probably a reason Houston Alexander got a late start to his career too, I'm sure, right? Wasn't there some stories on that too? I don't know. And I'm not trying to judge. I'm just saying that it's coming. It's all coming back to me, Brad.
I think Houston's actually been fairly public about that sort of stuff. So
yeah, no,
I don't think there's any issue with that.
Because that was kind of the thing, is that was part of his story as to why he got to the game later than most, even at this era. By the way,
when did the Taylor tape say he was already like 35 at this point?
Oh, I was going to say he was probably close to 40. UFC betting boss. I'll be at Holloway versus Allen this weekend. Nice. I know some friends that'll be at that card. Good card. I'm so excited who you got. I have no clue yet, man. I'm getting this done tonight, and then I'll be jumping on it tomorrow. But hit me back on this channel on Thursday, usual time, usual bat place, and I'll get you guys breakdowns. But right now we're doing a flashback. Up next, of course, just that, and it's showing Nate Diaz triangling people. We got Nate Diaz versus Kurt Batman Pellegrino. Really important fight. Is this Nate Diaz's first fight off of his tough contract there? I'm still looking up Houston Alexander stuff on this end, seeing what he did after this.
You know what? I'm going to have to pull that up very quickly, because I think he might have had one more after, because they showed a triangle victory. I know that's not how he won his tough finale, unfortunately. So I think he had a couple. This was his third fight after winning tough. He had submission wins, naturally, over Junior Asuncao and Alvin Robinson, who Robinson was the one they showed in that little highlight package, I think, him Nate triangling him.
That's right. By the way, Houston Alexander, he actually lost to Thiago Silva before this. I remember that fight. I've made me a Thiago Silva fan, that fight. Also, another guy did some stuff with the law. Hashtag police standoffs. But yeah, he would lose to Eric Schaefer, win an Iowa regional, and then he wouldn't be back until he got signed for like a one-fight deal for that Kimbo Slice epic hands on the knees fest, if you remember that.
Oh my goodness! Yeah, that was something special.
That was
that was a catch weight, right? I don't think Kimbo ever got all the way down to 205, did he?
I believe it was a catch weight, and it also took place at the Tough 10 finale, which was the last Ultimate Fighter I've watched till today. By the way, I've never bothered tuning in since Tough 10, Brad.
Well, at this time, a lot of these Spike cards were just full of Ultimate Fighter tie-ins. Obviously, we've got Nate, who won his season of the Ultimate Fighter. We've got Joe Lauzon, who, after knocking out a former UFC champion, had to go on the Ultimate Fighter. So, Kenny Florian, obviously, contestant on Tough 1. So, they
Absolutely.
really used these free cards to try and build up those Ultimate Fighter veterans at this point. And I mean, it worked. A lot of them have turned into, household names as far as MMA goes. So, I don't know. I'm not trying to tell the UFC how to do their job, but maybe start to consistently feature fighters on free cards, and you can actually grow some stars or gain some interest in fighters otherwise.
Crazy, right? I know. And I know we can kind of go apples for apples. You can be like, well, this guy is not very experienced, and the UFC rushed him. They were doing it back then. And you also have to take into context and adjust for inflation of the times, Like, it was more excusable back then in some instances, like, But nowadays, with the wealth of riches, that are available to him, it's hard to make that argument. But we are getting the introductions now. Fans of the Nate Diaz impression actually he may make a return for this fight, because this is the fight that spawned my love for impressions for Nate Diaz. I always had a love for impressions since a kid, but spoiler alert, Nate Diaz may or may not talk after this, and it's just classic. Fuck, I am. Like, you saw Nick Diaz in his corner, by the way. This is not too long after he popped for when he fought Gomi.
During this as well, so.
Yeah, exactly. Like, I wouldn't be surprised if he was as high as his brother Nick was when he fought Gomi. I'm putting that out there. And they're in.
Just had a
457,
LaBelle
456. Yeah, 455. Am I ahead of you?
You are about 2 seconds behind me.
Behind, okay, it's all good. Yep, Pellegrino got a single leg. He's already working on top for your screen as well as the viewers then. I'm just a couple seconds behind Brad.
Turtle from the Cesar Gracie camp.
Yep,
Use
that's
that turtle
right.
to get up, and you're screwed if the guy can leg ride or actually take your back.
Yeah, exactly. Or you hope they gas out like BJ Penn did against his brother later on, who dealt with it well at first, but of course, the round one. Pellegrino doing a pretty good job staying on top, switching over to a front headlock.
Looking for I've watched this sport for so long, and I know there's a difference between an Anaconda and a Darce and a Bravo. Couldn't tell you what they are. He was looking for one of them at some point in there. Had an arm under the armpit, but switching back to the ride again, and
yep, he was almost trying to cow catcher him over, and he does. Wow, that was a nice move. I haven't watched this in a while, so I'm like impressed with some of this wrestling that Pellegrino's doing. But by the way, Pellegrino, this is in 2008, folks. Pellegrino has very 90s-esque tattoos, right, Brad? But if you look at his tattoos as a package, Really hasn't evolved that much in MMA, right? He kind of looks like the guys of today still, which says a lot.
I don't want to say he's a pioneer, but certainly he's in the and the camera angle switches to that like full tribal stuff that he's got on his arm. He's got a sun moment as well.
Right, he's got a sun on his back, that kind of sun that like chicks would get around their belly and dudes would get at like different spots, right? Cyril Gahn still
really
has
nice
one again. To a
Pellegrino
point.
On top.
Yeah, nice. Pellegrino crucifix position, pounding down,
already.
Just messing him up. I remember actually picking Pellegrino and feeling crazy for it, and then feeling very validated watching this live, because I watched this live as did Brad back in the day, and I was like, yeah, yeah, Kurt, Batman, baby. Because again, Pellegrino's not an impressive guy. He's got a lot of decisions.
Yeah, he's looking for that wrist control and looking for a triangle. As you know, that was his thing at this point. He hadn't fully developed the Nick style of, you know, pressure boxing and hoping that his opponent was going to dive into something sloppy. He's a little bit less refined, and you can really see that here.
Tough elbow. Hey, Kevin Aioli in the background. I don't know if I recognize any of the other media members. I always love looking at the people on the sides when I do these rewatches, Brad. It tells you a lot about the time period. Pellegrino on the back.
I'm trying to see who's beside him.
Yeah, I know. I can't recognize very many of the journos. You really got to know your history as well to recognize some faces.
Yeah, this is if this fight was happening and somebody had that position today, there's about a 0% chance they wouldn't have just slapped on a body triangle there and the round would be over. I'm glad that Kurt Pellegrino did not. And instead we get some more scrambling, fun grappling exchanges, looking for that front headlock series again.
You notice before the WNME era, there's just a lot less random corporate douchebags going through their midlife crisis sitting cage side. There's like actual empty slots on the cage side for photographers and people actually working.
Yeah.
It's great.
I mean, instead of that, you've just got a bunch of guys in affliction shirts and backwards hats in the front row.
Yeah, I'll take that over the Prime. I'll take Condom Depot as well over the Prime Energy Corners with yeah. I'm old. I'm just hating.
I was looking for some, I've got a beer here. I can't complain. It's delicious from one of my local breweries, but I really wanted to see if I could find some Mickey's Fine Malt liquor to watch this card along with.
Me and my friends, I mean, in the Chuck Liddell era, we were watching the sport. We used to joke when the UFC got that first deal where it was like Forrest Griffin and Liddell in the cans, and we'd be like, Mickey's, get drunk and hit people, because that's what we were joking. That's what Liddell should have been saying. By the way, Nate Diaz and Echo Unlimited shorts. I have to point that out.
Can you call those shorts? Those are like capris at this point. Like,
yeah, those
are long.
Like jorts. Yeah.
But yeah, look at all the throwback sponsors that we've got on the trunks. MMA Warehouse, Zappos.
Round one is over. Yeah, Zappos. Yep. Yeah. Zappos. They're just making their rise at this time. Zappos.
But very entertaining first round. I noticed that Pellegrino had a little look up at the clock during that clinch exchange with about a minute left. So I don't know if he's starting to tire out at this point. Not really his MO, but you know that the Diaz's tend to fatigue guys in there with their style.
Clear 10-9. I don't know if it would have been a cheeky 10-8 even under today's, but got to be a clear Pellegrino round. Nate Diaz throwing a nice 1-2. Yeah. 436, 435. I'm a couple seconds behind you guys. Don't worry. You should be a couple seconds up if you started at the time Brad did and I gave off at the start of this podcast. Ooh, Pellegrino with another takedown. Yeah. Pellegrino could wrestle, man.
I mean, it probably wasn't actually that nice. It was against the Diaz, so not a whole lot of resistance.
Yeah. But you got to remember this time, too. He wasn't an accoladed wrestler, Brad, but how many wrestlers have Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belts at this time, too, right? It wasn't as high as it is today.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's
Quest.
Yeah, that's another throwback. Trying to look at what's on the on the mat, see what movies they advertise and certain things. I shared a clip not too
Yeah.
long ago from around the same period with the Anderson Silva fight, and Carla Duran, shouts to Carla, Stitch Duran's daughter. Speaking of jorts, she was commenting on Rudy, the cut man. He was wearing some jorts too, because again, it's like your eyes can't help but go to like the styles, at least for me, of the people of the time. Like it really tells you where you're at, Nate tries to kick off, but kick Pellegrino back on top, working from top side.
I can't help but reference GSP again. A lot of that quiet pass to half guard from Pellegrino in this one, where guys just push down on the knee and slide that leg over into half guards. It's always very effective if you can maintain the position and land some good ground and pound. Very hard to do that against the Diazes as well. They're always great at recapturing guard.
Ground and pound is in full vogue in this era too, I would argue, right, Brad? I mean, it's.
Yeah,
I don't know if it's as dominant as ever been, but it's still aspired to greatly. You can't call it a lost art in this era.
No, and much more effective. The style matchup plays into that a little bit here, because you don't have a guy that's necessarily just trying to stand up and avoid grappling at all costs. He's willing to grapple with you. But certainly
Tony Weeks,
guys that were a little bit less cautious about throwing strikes on the ground rather than
almost gets guillotine going for a takedown, and it's triangle time. Nate Diaz locked the triangle, already double birding the camera, flexing, not even adjusting the head, and he just gets the tap anyways. Wow, stealing victory from the jaws of defeat. Nate Diaz, baby, as one of the first times he does this in the UFC, right? As far as losing until he's winning, and he would later make his name for that to more newer fans.
Yes, just kind of classic stuff there from him. He managed to get the arm isolated in that takedown from Pellegrino, because he threatened the guillotine and turned it into an immediate triangle. Just kind of
Joe Silva shaking his hand.
A guy of Pellegrino's credentials. Wasn't able to sneak out of there, but well done by Diaz. He pulled the head down a little bit there at the start to trap it in, but he just watching the submission there, and it was much tighter than it initially seemed, because that arm was just stuck right across, even though it wasn't the deepest triangle you've ever seen.
Yeah, I was surprised too. Again, we were just talking about not many wrestlers also had the Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt, but Nate Diaz, who was maybe barely even a brown belt, if that, at this time, he definitely wasn't a black belt, catches him. You see Cesar Gracie, Richard Perez, Nick Diaz, Stitch Duran, giving him props, which is cool. Yep, Stitch is still in the UFC at this point, the best. Joe Silva was
I think I've got an autograph from him somewhere.
Yeah? Nice. Me too. I actually have him autographed a picture of Kenny Florian post BJ Penn UFC 101 fight. It's Stitch autographs that one. But, yep, Nate gets his hand raised. And I like this. This is an era, too, where Joe Silva would come in. Unless it was a really bad performance, that's how you know you got on his bad side. But he would come in and shake their hand, and you loved it.
I feel like we got to be quiet for a couple of seconds here for the fans.
He seems high as fuck right in this, does he not, Brad?
Always.
I just want people to know, like, sometimes people think the Ultimate Fighters are sheltered. Not me, I ain't looking for no sheltering. You know what I'm saying? It was a little tough going in the first round. Did he get you nervous at all? No, I'm kind of slow starter, man. I needed to wake up in there. I've been
what a weird question.
Today, so I knew, I was like, he can't keep this up for 3 rounds. I know I'll stay alive, you know what I'm saying? He did good, though. Talk us through one of the most entertaining triangles we've seen all year. He tried to dip me up. I had the guillotine kind of locked. Yeah, he shouldn't have picked me up like that. That's what got it locked. I kept it locked. I knew I was going to have it. Watch this.
Watch this.
I was like, I got it.
Watch this.
Now this is where it's important. As soon as you got that foot locked under, you knew it was over.
Yeah, man. As soon as I locked it, I knew. That's why I kind of threw my hand up. I knew it was
Nate Diaz, ladies and gentlemen.
Wants to give a shout outs? They cut him off. He was reaching for the mic, and they cut him off. I think he actually gets it in the live broadcast. But I actually think he got it in the live broadcast, Brad and folks. But they clean up a lot of things in the broadcast, which I will turn up the volume for the next fight to see if they cleaned up something. Notably, Rogan says against Matt Hamill versus Tim Boesch. Do you know what I'm talking about, Brad? The next fight.
I can't. I'm thrilled to find out, though.
It was the
just knowing the fighter and the broadcaster that we're dealing with. I'm I'm expecting fireworks.
Yeah,
I'm
guessing
the greatest Irish MMA fighter of all time on the pads there in the back with good old Tim Boesch. Marcus
That's right.
Davis, the Irish legend.
Yep, the Irish hand grenade, baby. I was a big Marcus Davis fan. I was like, oh yeah, southpaw, baby. Not many southpaws.
No,
actually back then.
Marcus Davis. Who was the Anderson card? It was the opening fight of that card, but very entertaining one-round fight between
absolutely.
Marcus Davis, and now I'm gonna have to look up who he beat in that one. But
I remember because it led to drama that led to his fight, which was another good one at UFC Rapid Fire on the undercard of Joe Stevenson, BJ Penn, because someone called him a fake Irishman after that fight, and then he challenged that guy and knocked him out.
Paul Taylor. Marcus
That's
Davis
right.
Paul
There we
Taylor. I was
go.
going to say
Yeah,
Dan Taylor, but that's because there's a lacrosse player named Dan Taylor, and I knew that wasn't right. But
and then Paul Taylor and what's his name,
life.
the other Liverpool dude, had an amazing fight after that fight. Again, the aforementioned UFC 80 Rapid Fire in London, Newcastle, England. One of the few title fights they got.
The other Paul Kelly.
Paul Kelly, yeah, and it was like one of the best first 30, 45 seconds of a fight because they're just both unloading on each other with combinations and no defense. All right.
Did we get
no walkouts,
Matt
but
Hamill
a tail of
doing
the
his
tape?
own ASL interpretation? Obviously.
You know what I always hated, and I'm not trying to make jokes. I've actually have a lot of deaf people in my family. My mom speaks fluent American Sign Language. A lot of people in my family do, but I felt like they didn't. This sounds crazy, but there was a certain era, Brad, where they actually didn't say it enough. And I was like, can they tell him that he's deaf? Because they would just go interview. He's got hit in the head a bunch. And he's just going, and like, if people don't know that he's deaf, they're just like, whoa, they must let anybody fight in this Ultimate Fighting Championships. I mean, this is like an earlier in the day of the closer to its criticism too, right? Before it was really, it's still trying to make its way mainstream at this point, right? I'm not trying to be mean, but you know what I'm talking about, Brad? Was there a...
He sounds like a 2023 Diego Sanchez. Yeah, I know.
Oh my god!
Sorry.
No, that's great.
Probably
That's
not allowed
great.
to say that. Sorry.
We're just like we're not trying to get Joe Rogan canceled for his possible use of the R word, depending on the broadcast here. And I'm not talking about the R word. There's a couple of them, but the shorter one, the 4-letter one. It rhymes with grape. But there we go. All right, the card is in.
Adam Martinez. I haven't seen that name in a long time as a referee.
Yeah, it looks like Pedro from Napoleon Dynamite is essentially reffing this fight.
I was going to say they put the skinniest ref possible in for this Haas fight here.
Right. Matt Hamill, of course, gets a quick takedown on Boesch. And this is also the card, Brad, that started off for me, and this still holds true. Colorado, everyone's like, Texas has bad judges, right? Colorado has the funniest looking referees. And I don't know if the creepy old guy who always like fondly smiles at the fighter like he's some pedophile in a van is working this event, who still works events in the most recent UFC Colorado shows. But we'll get Jim Norton lookalike. We've got Pedro from Napoleon Dynamite. I mean, they've got them all in this commission. I'm not trying to make fun. I'm making fun of them. You know what I mean. Sorry.
And then you got your classics, Herb in that last one, and
Herb looking young.
I'm sure we'll probably. Yeah, he was trim. In that
he wasn't
one.
far from his fighting days in this.
I was just going to say the same thing. He fought James Irvin, did he not?
I believe he did. Yeah. And by the way, what is it? Houston Alexander has an amateur loss on his career to Josh Neer, which I find funny.
Huh.
The timeline doesn't make sense.
Okay.
I'm guessing Josh Neer just showed up at an amateur event and fought because he's Josh Neer.
That sounds about right. A lot of half guard work. Again, actually really nice riding from Hamill to stay on top, even though Boach got him elevated, probably about 30 seconds ago. But managed to keep that top position, and this was Matt Hamill's MO at the time.
My goodness, Broomfield Event Center is one of the graphics, which makes sense. It's the place that's going down. But there's not a lot of graphics. They look really neatly. It doesn't look like a NASCAR thing at all, Brad, back in 2008, huh?
The fighters' trunks look like a little bit NASCAR, but, I mean, I don't particularly care. Wow, that is a quick stand-up.
Quick stand-up by Pedro Martinez. I don't even know if that's his last name, but, well, that's what he's getting called. Front kick by Bosch. Right hand by Bosch.
Oh, did you see the little sort of inside calf kick by Matt Hamill there? I don't think it was intentional, but
right.
Innovator.
Innovator, there we go. Matt Hamill, baby. He was trying to tell us.
Bosch swinging for the.
But ironically, it was you guys that couldn't hear him.
Yeah.
All right. Sorry. Going to hell. Wow. Bosch, by the way, he already had his massive throw David Heath into the fence moment at this point of his career. That kind of put him on the map. I know, Brad, you remember that? David Heath, there's a name I've not heard in a long time.
Not a lot of people have, I'm sure. But
a lot of these names, to be honest.
Swinging for absolute everything, and he was always able to do a lot in the clinch. Even as kind of an undersized 205er, he was very dangerous. I guess another example of knees. Just if he could tighten up some of those uppercuts a little bit, probably would have been a whole lot more effective.
Great point. Tim Bosch with the camo trim and black sprawl with the gold trim as well in there. There's a lot going on with those sprawl shorts, but they made them in about every damn color back in the day, if you remember.
I don't know if this is pre-Condom Depot. I feel like it's not. Maybe we just haven't gotten to the tier of fighter
right on the cusp.
Condom Depot would be sponsoring.
It was. I noticed. I don't know if it was a language barrier, but I noticed from the dynamic fastener dull ones to the more exploitative Condom Depots, they ended up on Brazilian guys like Verdum's trunks first. I saw them on the Brazilian fighters' trunks a lot. I don't know why. I felt like I saw Condom Depot there.
Is just those knees. Every time they get in the clinch, he not a tall guy, but he gets those knees up there.
He does. Matt Hamill really doing a pretty good job, really, there, actually sticking to his range with his jab.
Yep.
Trying to pin Bosch along the fence and keep him there. Ooh. But Bosch just trying to come face block by Tim Bosch, huh? The old Jeet
I don't know why you would want to hang out in the clinch with Tim Bosch.
Shout out to my friend Jordan, my guy Jordan Killian, who's been on this podcast, Brad. He said Tim Bosch looks like that. Everyone always had that friend with that drunk dad that picked him up from practice at one point. And that was Tim Bosch, right? He's like your friend's drunk dad who would pick you up from practice, and you could smell the cans on him. How was practice, boys?
I know you mentioned Kurt Pellegrino, but Matt Hamill has a nice one going on in this fight as well.
Yeah, probably from one of those Bosch knees, I imagine, to your clinch points, Brad. Another leg kick for Bosch.
Yeah. But, yeah, Hamill, the striking from the outside isn't clean, but he stays busy enough, he throws straight enough, and he's a big guy and hits hard enough that it works.
Missed on a kick, front headlock, scrambles back to the feet. Wow, Bosch really just aggression. He's just powering through, man. I mean, we critique defense now. In 2008, it wasn't even an option.
Yeah. Back when I actually used to analyze the sport and write about things, I did a series of statistically based articles, and that was the one conclusion that I came to. It was a little bit after this time. It was probably 2010, where that was the big improvement in MMA, and now Matt Hamill is on top and just pounding away. But yeah, defense is the big differentiator in high level fights.
3/4 ride by Matt Hamill. Speaking of innovator, that wasn't a popular ride back then, and he finishes from the 3/4 ride. Turn up the.
That's a little bit of exhaustion happening there, I think, with that finish.
All right, let's see if Matt Hamill. Yeah, he was in a 3/4 mount, and he grabs his throat with Joe Rogan calls a certain move here, and punches him with the other hand.
A few events down the road from this, UFC 84, we have one of the best examples of the old R choke.
Oh my God! Yeah. let's see if they edit it out.
Wanderlei Silva and Keith Jardine.
It doesn't matter, just continuous bang, 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 and Bo's just unable to defend. And here's the end. He's got the choke in place and just dropping left hands.
They edited it. Those battles. Oh yeah. You can hear it. You can hear it. He goes. He says it too. Oh, he goes. They got the. He goes choke in place. They cut the APE. They missed the R. They go. He's got the. He says it in place like it's a procedure. Jesus Christ, Rogan. It's hilarious because 2008. Like you go back and watch shows like Arrested Development, even and stuff, and you just see how much like casual racism was accepted in our culture, at least North American, U.S. culture, and there wasn't but even back then, folks, they were like, Rogan, you might want to not use that word. Even back then, folks, is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, that's man, this event. I mean, obviously we're missing intros and things like that.
Right? Yeah,
but
yeah.
This is flying through with the way it's been edited down on Fight Pass.
Yeah, absolutely. Which is good. It makes it digestible, for us here. But yeah, that's hilarious. Oh, thank God they got the.
Yeah.
See, they trying to cut the interpreter off camera. Like, just let him. Which is fine. Doesn't really matter. But Matt Hamill giving respect to Tim Bosch, of course. All class, Matt Hamill, man. Love Matt Hamill.
And he had a lot of horsepower in there. So
yeah, he did.
Which that's a pretty good way to describe Tim Boach.
He had a. Oh man, no. Dan, stop. All right, but yeah, dude has some crazy strength to him. I still can't believe, bro. Jesus Christ, bro. Sorry, really? I'm still laughing at it.
He said that?
No, I'm just laughing like without a beat, like.
Yeah, I think this was sort of the last time that Matt Hamill fought a mid-level. Well, he might have had a couple after this, but this was really his boost up into the upper tiers. Because after this, he fought Rich Franklin, wasn't it?
Rich Franklin would fight Rampage later on.
John Jones.
Yep.
Obviously holds a victory over John Jones.
That's right. Yeah, he beat John Jones after this, right?
Yep.
That's right. This is the man. Man who beat John Jones, folks.
Check out this win streak in Matt Hamill's career. Mark Munoz, John Jones, Keith Jardine, Tito Ortiz. That's a great 4-fight win streak right there.
Dude, Tito Ortiz has the same Tito Ortiz who has a victory over current Bellator heavyweight champion Ryan Bader.
That's the one.
That's right.
It was right before Tito beat Ryan Bader as well. So that's a quality win right there.
Oh, that's epic. Crowd shot. Yeah. Crowd not too crazy. This crowd. It's the early 2000s crowd where you really start to feel old.
All right, now we step up the level a little bit. And Thiago Alves was just coming into contendership, and Caro Parisian was struggling at this point, but still a very talented fighter in the welterweight division. So this was it was more highly anticipated than the co-main event, which is why you haven't seen a single mention of the co-main event anywhere in this broadcast or on the fight poster or anything for this one. But quite quite highly anticipated. And Thiago Alves went on to, impromptu headline a pay-per-view event shortly after this.
Yeah, he had a UFC Bedlam, that like injury-ridden card where he knocked out Matt Hughes. Is that one? Is that it? Yeah.
That is the one. Yeah.
Yeah, UFC Bedlam was like a normal week in like the COVID era as far as matchmaking goes, but it was rare back then because you had like a whole month between the cards, so.
Yeah, this I'm just looking through Caro's career right now. Tremendous series of fights just prior to this. Sort of that. Yeah. There was the lightweight triangle that I always talk about between Josh Thompson, Hermes Franca, and Eve Edwards, and they put on tremendous fights. And then there was the welterweight equivalent of Caro, Nick Diaz, and Diego Sanchez. You could just match up any of those dudes at any time, and it would be, tremendous. Yeah,
golden. Absolutely. Caro's, where I get my grappling lineage from, of course, I come from Neil Melanson, purple belt under him. He's the only black belt Caro, till this day, I think, is ever given. That was Neil. They trade under Gokor Trevisan, who also trained with Jean LaBelle. So combining judo and sambo, produced guys like Caro, of course, Caro's cousin Manny. Ronda Rousey came from that gym. Hayastan, of course. Again, if you want to stereotype, I'm sure it was probably in Glendale too, if we want to follow the Armenian stereotypes as far as California goes. But yes, it was. I remember Neil saying, he was like, I remember Caro took me to one of his family reunions. It was essentially a bunch of Armenian guys in tracksuits smoking cigarettes, practicing judo in the front yard.
Sounds about right. So to give some context for this one, as we're getting to the intros here, 25 and 24, I forget that Caro was still this young at this point, because he had been around for a while. But he had won 7 or 8 of 9, including Nick Diaz, Matt Serra, Chris Lytle, like a bunch of good wins coming into this one. And Thiago Alves was a extremely highly touted prospect as well. I think that his only loss in his recent UFC past was John Fitch, and that was kind of a strange one. Upkick and stuff that happened in that fight.
By the way, you got Randy Couture in the corner. Looks like he had Extreme Couture all decked out in his corner for this one. I forget about that. Which is great. There's Neil. Hey, Neil's in the corner there too. Okay. There's my coach Neil. All right.
How many of those t-shirts do you have in your closet, Dan? Come on.
No, none of those made it, man. None of those made it past. By the way, Randy Couture real underrated in corners, because like you go watch like a Gray Maynard versus Frankie Edgar UFC 125, the rematch of the fight we're gonna watch later. Randy Couture, he's got a potty mouth in the corner, man. I love it, because he's like billed as Captain America, especially at this time. He curses like a sailor. I love it. All right, fights in. Trading jabs.
Tight, clean. Yeah.
Caro getting to the clinch,
which was kind of a death sentence for staying on your feet at this point. Mm-hmm. You haven't seen that in a while. Thiago Silva's, putting his leg up to stop the transition into mounts. That has certainly lost its effectiveness over the years.
No, definitely. I love when people do that, by the way, because you just swing your near side arm behind their knee, and you pretty much put them into a cradle or leg ride. Oh, and to a mount using the cage. I mean, just smothering, grappling.
Mount for Caro, but Alves showing a little bit more modern grappling defense, except for the fact that he got away from the fence instead of using it to stand up, but really pushed his legs through to avoid the mount, grabbed the underhook, and was using that fence side underhook to stand up, keep his back against the fence.
Yep, using the fence well, very modern, especially for 2008, what we're talking about. The American top team, of course, still a notable gym back then. Separation.
can get back into the clinch at any point, but I would have thought that he would have been a little bit more desperate to hold on to that position, even though Thiago was starting to get the underhooks there, but he kind of just let him break off.
Yeah, it might speak to some of the psychology, you know. He's still thinking he's, because of his age and the respect he had before this fight, that he could maybe, you know, not have to improve and the game won't pass him by. Of course, that's usually never the case, right? Unfortunately.
Yeah, just you can tell there's still a lot of work that needs to be done in Caro's striking, and
he was really ahead of his corner. Yeah, he was really ahead of his game in grappling, really, if you look at it, a lot of the things, because I've been taught some of those things, been handed down, you know, but when you rely on one thing or the other, we've seen that story in MMA sometimes, and Caro obviously was dealing with a bunch of stuff in and out of the cage, but I think, you know, that really comes to fruition here, whereas Alves, spoiler alert, has a hard time getting matchups after this fight, right, Brad?
Yes. That's how he ended up in a short notice main event, running a pay-per-view. But yeah, just one of the camera angles showed the Caro's corner, and I'm kind of surprised that I guess it makes sense that Randy's the lead corner, but I would have thought it would have been your boy Neil that would have been more of the lead there, shouting out instructions.
Yeah, not at this time. I'm not sure what the timeline is as far as Neil might not even have been with the gym actually at this point, even though he's wearing the Extreme Couture. Neil wasn't officially brought to the gym until Randy fought the aforementioned Antonio Rodrigo Nogueira, if you remember that fight. That was a really underrated post-prime fight for them too. And Neil was brought in for that specifically because he was the same frame as Nogueira and was a triangle guy, a guard guy, studied Nogueira's game. And that's how Neil got, and that's why I'm very surprised that he's in the corner. What's that technique called? Yeah, what was that technique called, Brad? Rogan just taught it to us. I wonder what Rogan said.
There's so many different applications for that choke. That time as takedown defense, but
only in MMA where like we are positively positing that word into the technique. Well, that's how you know it's effective. So we're going to call it this. Sorry. Exchanging jabs.
Caro's doing enough to kind of keep Thiago inactive on the feet here, but you can see that Thiago's starting to gain a little bit of confidence at this point. Knows he can defend takedowns or get back up if he gets taken down, and starting to open up a little.
Not like being like creepy guy.
Nice sneaky little trip there from Caro.
I'm glad that the round is coming to the close so we can see the ring card girls, not to be like a creepy guy about it, but I'm just, you know, there's eras of ring card girls. I'm curious who we're working with, right? You know, you said Edith earlier. You saw?
Ariani. It's Edith and Ariani.
Oh, wow.
They're the only two A-team. Yeah.
Wow. Young Ariani, huh?
Yeah.
She must have just recently started around this time. Because wasn't that Logan person the one? Sorry, what?
Oh, yeah. There was, and Rochelle, Leah, and who else was in there at this point? But just before they went back to the actual fight, they showed the sign about the elevation here, which we haven't maybe saw it come into play a little bit. Oof.
Oh, and a beautiful knee. Not even in the clinch. Just, I mean, they were just kind of coming together. It was perfectly timed. Lead knee from Thiago Alves sends Caro crumbling. Caro reacting similar to Ponzinibbio did last night. Not to timestamp too much with Holland.
So, just looking at the bodies here, what weight class do you think Caro would fight in if he came into MMA today?
I mean, he should have been at 155, to be honest. You know, for sure he should have been. But again, even for that era, and I wasn't trying to what's up?
Did you hear Joe say he didn't know about that stoppage?
He didn't. I didn't hear that. There's probably a lot of good commentary too right now, folks. By the way,
Joe was a big Caro proponent as well. So
he was, yeah.
That's not surprising.
And you know what? This seems like one of those fight night cards too, where Goldie probably would have cut loose. You know, as far as you know, whatever he does to get ready for shows, which always makes it a fun Goldie.
This was the low stakes for them. I mean, it was on Spike TV, but it wasn't a pay-per-view. They got to try out the new material, and you can see where Joe goes with that almost immediately, and yeah, that fight. So
Yeah, right. They're just, I mean, they're really kind of, they're casual Fridaying it, in other words.
yeah. I mean, I get it. Carl wasn't out in there, but whenever you fall and it
Yeah.
looks like you're crossing your legs as you fall down and look like a deer on ice, that's going to result in a stoppage pretty quick. So.
Yep. This is a non-mustache Mazzagatti, too, which I think was kind of a semi-new thing in 2008. So I think 2007, Mazzagatti was still mustache Mazzagatti. Then he brings it back. Joe Rogan still wears the same exact shirts, by the way. Like, he was wearing the same exact shirt with the collar from the... He still wears the same clothes.
They fit a little different now, but...
Sure, yes.
Yeah, I think it might be the same, not even like the same style of shirt. I think it might be the same shirt.
Yeah,
those,
he loves it. Yeah.
Those cuffs do not fit at all, though.
It's
Somebody
funny.
get Joe a tailor.
Well, it's funny because Joe's not letting go to the style of this era, right? And like I said earlier, if you rewind just a little earlier, Brad, to the mid to early aughts, you get all the dudes who are not letting go of the 90s style. And that's a fun one to watch when you watch those UFC events. You see fucking mullets and some crazy sideburns. You see like a bunch of different people holding on to different eras.
Oh, the classic.
The punching
What
guns! Oh!
Wow. I did not remember that was
Holy
part of this
crap!
event, but that's part of the classic Ronda Rousey shadowboxing gif.
Yeah. Explain that, Brad, to people listening on audio. What they just
so you
did.
they panned through the crowd as they often do for these fights, and you had two fellas just throwing the most hideous punches you've ever seen in complete earnestness. Probably a little bit of drunkenness as well. And they were just arm punching all over the place. Just swatting flies out there. Looked like Brendan Schaub trying to catch butterflies.
Oh my god, great reference! Oh, I didn't know that was this event. Holy crap, that is epic. I don't even know what event the Just Bleed guy happened at, to be honest, off the top of my head. But that was another viral crowd moment, sure.
I want to say Just Bleed guy was like the Niagara Falls or like Buffalo event that they did, like UFC 7. It was like a Marco Huas, Paul Varlins. I think it was back there, but
that makes sense with a guy wearing a Kangol hat. Oh, Rumble Johnson is on your screen now. Highlight package.
Yep.
Yes, a 170 Rumble Johnson. Oh my god! Somebody get that man a sandwich. He looks so sickly.
This man, I still don't understand how he ever made 170 pounds, but
it's not even hindsight
was
too.
A frightening human being.
It's not even hindsight too. You look at him talking, like he looks sickly. His eyes look red and kind of fucked up. His eyes would always look really fucked up closer to weigh-ins. And Brad, I remember watching live saying, again, before I knew he was going to miss weight at 185 against Vitor and eventually beat Orlovsky at heavyweight and fight for the title at 205, I remember saying, this guy does not look healthy making this weight. And this was like early ignorant Dan Tom. Did you ever get those vibes early with him?
It wasn't so much about like looking at him physically, just because we didn't quite have the availability for interviews and press conferences, and
sure.
You'd get the occasional like weigh-in picture and that sort of stuff, but it was more just when you saw the guys that he was standing next to and in the cage with, and like, there's no way this man possibly belongs at the same weight class as these dudes. And then you feel the tail of the tape, and 4 inches taller, 7-inch reach advantage. Certainly not virtually identical in this one.
He actually made 169.5 on this one for the official weight. You see that? Rumble Johnson?
I did.
R.I.P. obviously, by the way, the timestamp. He has passed away.
Oh, yeah. But yeah, you can... there's a whole lot more muscle that should be on that frame than is in this particular fight. But very, very early in his career, and I don't know that this was necessarily the time period where it was kind of like as low as you can go MMA, but it was just getting into that era, I think.
There's Matt Hughes. When they were showing crowd shots, they show some Midwest-looking lady with the Matt Hughes shirt.
It wasn't. Oh no, I don't think it was. I thought that on the right-hand side of his corner. Oh my goodness!
Jim Norton.
Weird
Tim Mills. Yes, Jim Norton. It's Tim Mills. Look how anxious he looks, and the poor guy doesn't know what's about to happen, folks. We're about to get started with round 1. Rumble Johnson, Tommy Spears. A must-see for all of Rumble Johnson. There we go. 4:57. Probably faster for you guys.
Frantic movement from Tommy Spear, and calf kick, inside calf kick from
I saw that.
Rumble Johnson.
A little
head kick.
Look at I'm watching the ref in the background, just like he's moving so frantically. Ooh. Oh my gosh! It's like when you know what's coming and they don't, and the ref almost got ran over by Rumble already.
Oh.
Look at the ref's face. Look at the ref's face. Look at this ref's face. Look at his face. He's like,
oh, jeez.
Oh, he's backing up to protect Tommy Spear, who's sleeping against the cage with his eyes open.
Okay, somebody's in there checking on him. I mean, the ref got in there at the appropriate time. It was...
I mean, the appropriate response, it wasn't a bad stoppage. You should be urgent, right? But, I mean, is there a referee more urgent than this guy as far as his eyes? Like, you could feel him freaking out. Like, I was watching him this whole time. I'm rewatching this fight, Brad. I'm laughing. That's why I was laughing my ass off. Because I'm watching it through his viewpoint. Oh, jeez. And, of course, Rumble Johnson.
I always forget that Rumble gets that, like, extra shot in after he's already sleeping against the cage.
Yeah, and it's just like one of those, you see the cut and it starts to bleed and he's already just sleeping with his eyes open leaning against the fence. It's weird. That's how he ends up in the knockout. Like, when do we ever see something like that, Brad?
There's,
you know?
I mean, some of the nastiest knockouts are just that visual of a guy like went down and like kneed himself in the face and stuff like that.
Their knees are splayed out and whatnot, but this guy, he almost goes perfectly into a ball resting against the fence, and that's the weird part, you know?
Yeah. Even like after he's supposedly rehydrated, I mean, there's a canal system through Rumble's abs in this fight. Like, there's no way this man should have been fighting at this weight class.
Yes. Rogan's eyes, for a guy who at this point has already seen everything, he's just like, oh.
Can this guy get some tighter shorts? I need to see what those thighs are like.
Yeah. Well, there's that aspect too, right, for Rogan. Not quite Czech Congo, his favorite in this era. Yes, we were talking about Joe Rogan's infatuation with muscular men, folks. It's a thing. And leg kicks. It's like, can you throw leg kicks, Anthony? It's like, yes. He didn't say that, but he wanted to ask that, folks. My goodness, I'm glad they squeezed that one into the broadcast.
Yeah. Extremely soft-spoken. I know that Rumble also had his faults, but
sure, yes.
Yeah,
we're not trying to remember.
I was going to say they started showing a little highlight package for the main event.
I know.
Skip completely over this one, but co-main event.
It's the forgotten
Frankie Edgar
fight.
came right in, and his UFC debut was Tyson Griffin, right? In
Yep.
a
Fight of the night.
fight.
Yeah, great fight.
And just immediately sort of cemented himself as one of those exciting guys at 155, and went on to have a couple big wins after that. I know Spencer Fisher was one. I can't forget who else he beat, but yeah, he was kind of took everybody by surprise.
Yeah, he's undefeated heading into this fight. He's 8-0 heading into this one, which is crazy to say. Derek Sparks says, "Look at the smooth brain on Brad." The big brain, the big brain.
Yeah, I changed it.
Yeah, that's right.
My bets have so far this year, those are going back to the smooth brain. But
oh, me too.
We'll get there eventually.
Yeah. Not to detract, but I'm like, I haven't just lost the 3 events. I've won 0 for the last 3 events. Technically, if you count PFL and Bellator.
I had a couple reverse sweeps earlier this year, so time to get back on the other side. Hit a couple. Unfortunately, on the wrong side of one of those in the Rob Font.
Nice. Oh, nice.
Yanez
I was happy.
Fight.
I was happy to be wrong about that one.
And then the crazy line on again, sorry folks for time stamping this, but on the young 18-year-old fella.
Yeah, I know. That's tale as old as time there. Dan Lauzon, the 31st. Were you betting on fights around this time, Brad? I was not.
I had placed a couple fights or a couple bets, but they were mostly like when I would go to shows live or when I was in Vegas. I didn't have an online account until 2009 is when I first signed up for the old 5 Dimes account. So not really doing a whole lot at this point, just picking and, I don't know. I apparently getting enough right that a couple of people took notice back then.
Nice. I hope you're well, fellas. Been too long, Brad. Derek Sparks says. Thanks for chiming in, Derek. Of course, we got the announcements going on for Gray Maynard. Frankie Edgar won. I was saying this feels like the forgotten fight of their series, Brad. But it was funny because
absolutely.
Edgar was actually on MTV too ahead of this fight on that one. What was that series they did? And they had MMA fighters on a lot. It was like Made or whatever, the show Made or something that would show him like going through the process. I remember they had like an amateur cutting weight in his car, and the parallel to it was they showed Frankie Edgar getting ready for this fight.
Okay.
I don't know if it rings any bells for you or anybody, but yeah, that was kind of. But that being said, this fight is actually a really good fight. Not very remembered. I was training at Extreme Couture and saw Gray Maynard putting in the boxing work with Ron Frazier. And spoiler alert, I believe this is a fight where we see Gray Maynard's boxing step up to a new level it previously wasn't. And they are in.
I think you're correct. Also, we haven't really been touching on this too much because betting wasn't widely available at this point. But
that's true.
There were a few books offering betting lines. Ooh, nice little knee there from Maynard to keep the distance.
Yeah, I'm curious what the lines were on these fights. If you ever have that information anytime during the broadcast.
So for this one, Edgar was minus 235. He closed against Gray Maynard, which, given their relative levels of experience and the guys that they had defeated, made sense. Yeah, it
made sense. I mean, Frankie Edgar already showed he could escape death with Tyson Griffin, whereas Maynard, no offense to him, knocked himself out taking down Rob Emerson, right? So, I mean, let's be honest, right? Like, that's what they're probably going off of, you know?
And that's the king of Orange County to you, sir.
I still remember RDA just chewing up his inside of his leg. Oof. Nice jab by Maynard. Frankie trying to get on the inside.
Edgar's trying to mix up levels with his striking. He hasn't gone like his full Frankie Edgar, Clay Guida, bouncy footwork crossover at this point.
I was about to say that too, yeah. Much more flat than we normally see him.
Yep. Nice little change of angles and get the right hand in there.
I didn't I didn't notice him before, but I want to look for Mark Henry between rounds to see if he's still with him this early on.
Yeah, I think we might only get it for the main event, but they used to go to commercial break between rounds all the time, and that's probably why we haven't seen any in the broadcast thus far.
I saw one or two of his cornermen that definitely weren't Mark Henry, but I wasn't looking for Mark Henry, so we'll see if I can catch him.
Oh,
that's
right. Left hook in there from Maynard as well.
Yeah, he was working with one of my early boxing coaches, Ron Frazier. He was the black dude with the do-rag you'd see in Randy Couture's corner in this era. And he put in a lot of work with Gray before this.
Again, just sticking him from that. You would think that given the size of these two guys, that Maynard would be the one they would want to get inside and get into those grappling exchanges, but seems pretty intent on keeping the distance here. A little marked up, though.
Yeah, well, that's what happens when fighters start to want to be technical or learn to strike, right? They tend to be on the outside, and there he gets back to his wrestling after getting hit. And that's the thing, that's the dangerous thing, is if some fighters, especially if you're wrestlers, you should be a pressure fighter, right? And that is, you wonder if what would have maybe Gray would have looked like if he did that, but also with the durability that he ended up dealing with, maybe it was, I don't know, maybe that wouldn't have worked much better for him,
Yeah.
Frankie Edgar, though, to your point, Brad, his pressure game is still developing at this point. He still has a lot of improvement that's going to be coming in his career. Maynard just so big. Ooh, just muscles him down, huh?
I got the red spinning circle of death on my fight pass here, so I'm gonna have to resync up with you in a second.
All good. I'll keep rolling, and then you can just sync up with me, folks. You might be a couple seconds ahead of me, so it's fine. But 1 minute, 59 seconds, 58, 57 of the first round. Gray Maynard on top. And yeah, it's just so crazy to see someone controlling Frankie Edgar like this. Before or after, you really didn't see it that much.
Yep.
Again, Gray Maynard, obviously I'm a big fan of Gray's. I still have some hand wraps of his that I use. So I'm biased toward him, but yeah, it was I remember watching this just with very excited at home live. Like, this was one of the first times where I felt like I was rooting for a guy from air quotes my gym, the gym I was training at, right? Because I signed up somewhere at the end of 2007, and this is early 2008, right? So yeah, I mean, obviously Randy Extreme Couture, but this is one of the first times I remember,
Giving me
there we go,
the whole thing here.
Of course, we're coming into round two. Round two is in. They just touched hands. This is where I'm at, Brad. 457, 456. Maynard now mixing his takedowns with the boxing looks as he come forward. He misses, but it's the right idea. Frankie Edgar tries to come back. Not very clean, but both guys landing little bits here and there. 434, 433. 430 the second round is where I'm at.
I'm getting back to you. Don't worry.
All right.
Frankie Edgar throwing a combination. Sign back in.
All good, all good. Frankie Edgar with the combination shoots a takedown at the 413 mark. 410, 409, 408 of round two. Maynard on top from a front headlock. Real strong. Real strong from these positions. 357, 354, 353, 352, 351. Maynard gets a takedown. Working from top side, round two. 345, 344. Edgar using the fence, trying to push off, get up, got an underhook. 435 or 335, 334, 333, 332, 331, round 2. Nice body knees as he's trying to get up by Maynard. You got those body knees? Yeah. Oh, Edgar off the break. 423, 323, 321, 323, 19, 318, round 2. Nice hook off the break. I mean, these guys were just two guys you could throw together at any time in their career, and it was a fun fight.
Absolutely. Yeah, when they are at distance, and obviously we saw in the first round that got hit with a couple, and that's what caused him to go back to his wrestling. And Edgar's doing good work at distance here again.
Yeah, they're going back and forth here. Not the big highlight moments of the second and third fights, but again, this is a quietly good fight, both for their point of their career, the time of the sport, and so on. Just a solid, If you see one fight that goes to decision on the main card and it's a lightweight fight, chances are it's probably not a snoozer.
Absolutely.
Edgar having success with that left hand, though.
Having a lot more success when he's throwing the jab and straight punches. When he starts to get into these hooks, that's when he's starting to get clipped a little bit on the counter.
Yeah, showing it on his right eye. Edgar landing with that left hook. Nice knee to the body. Takedown by Edgar. Wow. Whips him down on that one.
Saw Caro in the previous fight and got inspired.
That was good wrist control that Maynard used cross wrist to get up. Very good. Not even guys of today using that enough. Oh, Cecil Peoples. I spy Cecil Peoples judging. I spot Cecil Peoples and Tony Weeks so far.
Do you spy him judging, or is he just
judging?
There?
He's there in the back. That's him there in the blue, the gray suit with a little bit of blue. That was Cecil.
Yeah, there's Tony on the other side.
Yeah, Tony Weeks is on duty for this one as well. Gray Maynard with the Gladiatoria shorts. Cage Fighter premiere for Frankie Edgar. I remember I had a pair of those in white that BJ had.
Settled down a little bit in this second round here, but I think both guys are just trying to find what works again.
Yeah, more they're like almost going back and forth. Not like a sparring session, but as far as they're barely throwing, they're throwing. But yeah, it's like back and forth. And Maynard with a takedown. 45 seconds left to go, roughly. Man, Maynard's so strong.
Yeah, that's the difference in this fight, where Maynard could just power up when Edgar got him down. Frankie tries to do the same thing and just ends up getting planted.
It was the bigger guys who could wrestle, like Benson, Gray, who were some of the tougher matchups / comprised the L's for Edgar in this division.
Hanging on to the Kimura, nothing there. And probably going to end out the round.
Wow, that guy was doing it forever. The Spanish guy in the background of your screen right now, he works with 10th Planet people as well. He's a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt. He does Spanish broadcast. You see him in corners. He's done translation, and he does commentary for the Spanish broadcast. He's an older guy. Okay. I don't know if you know who he is, but it's crazy. He was doing it all the way back then. I'm seeing him do it. Wow, they have a Spanish broadcast commentary set up there. That's cool. Weird little nerdy things I pick up, folks. Sorry, you watch these fights enough. I end up watching different things than you guys do. Yeah, this is a nice exchange. It's actually really nice wrestling exchanges to start off. Wrist control by Maynard. Wow, Maynard doing some really underrated technical things. I don't think he really got credit for.
See Frankie invent the shoulder strike right there.
Yeah, right.
I know they credit that to Conor McGregor, but
actually, I saw Anderson Silva do some before.
That was an old Randy trick too.
Randy too, yeah.
Randy back in the 40s.
Yeah, in the 40s. That's right. Yeah.
Maybe the 1940s as well.
Who knows what Captain America was doing back then, doing it to the Nazis. Yeah, Randy would use it pretty much anything as a weapon, that either any part of his body or
And that's the difference between this one. Frankie gets in on a single and can't muscle Maynard down, and Maynard gets in less in on a double and manages to get Frankie to his back a little bit.
Is that a sick of it all tattoo that Frankie Edgar has on his shoulder, that dragon? Never tell.
That's more up your alley.
Yeah, it's more up my alley. I just cringe when I see Edgar post with his arm. I was just watching that Joe Pyfer guy in the Contender Series. He posts and his arm just collapsed. It's a classic that happens to a lot of guys. It's nightmares. I've seen it in the
gym. It looked like Gray was going for more of that wrist control to try and keep Edgar from posting there, but couldn't. There you go.
Is that Lorenzo Fertitta or some other old guy? No, that guy's too old at that time for Lorenzo Fertitta. I'm thinking of Silver Fox Fertitta from now. There's Sean Shelby with the headset, young Sean Shelby.
Yeah.
He's working under he's the dark Jedi working under the Emperor Palpatine, Joe Silva. Yes, good. Learn my ways.
Yeah, Maynard can't get a whole lot done here, but I mean, at this time period and even present day, this is enough for him to be winning the round at this point, unless Frankie can get a little bit going, and he does off the clinch there.
Yeah, that's something I was going to bring up when we were talking about ground and pound Brad, that wrestling in general was just rewarded much more in the scoring, whether you agreed with it or not in this era. Oof.
Yeah, I don't think we've seen anything. I mean, obviously nothing's gone to the scorecard so far, but I don't think we could have seen anything that could be misjudged too incredibly at this point.
No, it's a competitive fight, and you're seeing them take breaths as they should, because again, this is altitude, right? So not many of the fights have been getting into the third round at this point of the night.
Yeah, I was just sort of thinking that when I saw, like Frankie actually looks a little bit tired, and it's only the third round. So this should be a seventh round if he's breathing heavy, but
maybe in like the fifth round if he's hurt, does he have his mouth open, right? Yeah, like that. Yeah. But...
yeah.
I love Joe Silva. He also had the best reactions. Whenever big fight things happen, like the Bonner Jones, right? He always low key had like crazy reactions back there. Oh wow, that's Stephen Bonner in the background. Sorry.
Wanting to pick out those interesting things from the crowd. I always like to watch the broadcasters and see what they're actually watching while they're calling the fight.
Yeah.
And nothing particularly interesting there. I mean, Goldberg was glancing down from the monitor to the actual fight that was literally 2 feet in front of them. But
as far as today, not the timestamp 2023, my favorite thing to watch the broadcast commentary is just John Anik's face cracking a shit-eating grin whenever Rogan or DC is saying something off color. But play-by-play was Goldberg, of course, and this was probably too small an event, Brad, to have a classic Goldberg and our friend Mandy Moore. But this is absolutely that era, right?
There's Rampage in the front row. I guess nobody told him that marijuana wasn't legal in Colorado in 2008, but hey.
I guess. Fight is over. Edgar looks to appear that he knows he lost. Maynard hands up that he won. I said Bonner was in the background because he was actually originally scheduled to fight Hamill this evening. So, Tim Bosch's defense, he fought short notice, I guess. So.
Yeah, that was on one of the posters that I saw when I was looking this up.
Another RIP. Damn.
Yes. Yeah, they're MMA is getting to that pro wrestling.
Look at Delagrati
territory when there's too many of those.
Speaking of Kangol hats and sideburns and not holding on to Delagrati is fucking 97 back there. Sorry.
Look at Guida in the background with the flip phone and the big silver chain.
It's crazy. It's a young looking Guida, which is weird to say.
Yeah,
he's never really short. He's never really looked young.
It's only like jaw length instead of shoulder blade length.
Yeah, his career of crab fisherman before he even started to do MMA, like already aged him to age of 40 when he started his career.
Hey, carpentry is a hard business, man.
He had the skin
That's
of a
Jesus.
he had the skin of a retired beach boy at the age of 50. You know, as far as that tan, sun beaten down, like the tattoos are just almost lifted. Sorry, not shitting on Guida. I'm just saying the guy was rugged. It's a rugged man.
The scorecards there, I think there was a 30-27 and a couple 29-28.
Yeah, it doesn't list it on. Let me see. It's listed on the wiki. 30-27 is across the board, Brad.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I guess. I don't know. I thought that a couple of those rounds were quite competitive. Wouldn't be shocked to see one of them go Frankie's way.
Yep. Gray saying I'm bigger. That's why I'm bigger. That's what he said.
Yeah.
That was the story.
So just while we're waiting for this next fight, because they're probably going to have maybe a highlight package before we get to this one. Maynard hit as an underdog there. Anthony Johnson plus 200 against Tommy Spear.
Wow, the tough push, kind of like the Contender Series push of today. Was that the tough push with Matt Hughes and stuff?
Had to be, absolutely had to be. James Irvin plus 230 over Houston Alexander.
Wow,
those were the yeah.
We would see something like that today, though, right? The knockout guy on a hot streak, even though he actually did just lose to Thiago Silva. But again, Irvin was kind of the shaky veteran. You weren't sure what part of the career he was at, right? Like you could have seen a similar justification of spread of today, whether you agree with it or not.
Yeah, I don't think any of those are crazy. And then the only other underdog that we've seen thus far in what we've watched is Thiago Alves was plus 130, which was also, that was a tightly lined fight, pretty justifiable at that point.
But all that Caro had a lot of name value to what we were speaking of earlier. Especially Joe Rogan really liked speaking highly of him too, and doing a Goldie and Joe, camera close-up cage side to promote the main event. What was the odds for Pellegrino and Nate Diaz? I'm curious on that fight.
That one was relatively close. Let me pull that up here. Nate minus 155, Kurt plus 135.
That makes sense. Yeah, again, Kurt wasn't a highlight fighter or anything, and Nate was the more popular fighter coming off tough winner. That makes perfect sense.
And you saw where that plus 135 was very live in the first round of that fight, so that makes sense.
Nate after that fight was great.
Staring longingly into
Joe's
eyes as he breaks down how vicious Kenny Florian's elbows are, and they should be registered weapons or something.
Hey, speaking of 1997, Goldie's, he's still kind of holding on to some faint sideburns, a little bit of the frosted tips flare out the front,
Yeah, I think earlier I said this is pre-frosted tip Goldie, but I think it might be post-frosted tip Goldie.
Yeah, they're like coming out. Yeah, it's hard to tell. That's right, yeah.
Oh, man. Who wants to see fight finish here?
I finish fights! I remember anytime I would get a sub in the gym at this point, and I wish I was this weight now. I wasn't too long ago, sadly. Or whatever weight I happen to be at. Like, if I ever got a sub. I finish fights. Oh man, that's right. Man. Yeah, Lauzon knocked out Pulver.
What was it? Was that was UFC 65? I want to say, because I think that was the start of the GSP Hughes card, GSP Hughes 2.
Yeah, that sounds about right. Yeah. Yeah, because Shootout was 69.
Not really hearing the pre-fight interviews, but this was, I mean, very much after the UFC had sort of lost the showmanship that it had when Zuffa first took over. But I feel like the broadcasts were much tighter than they are now. And I think a lot of that has to do with the way
Sure.
it's been edited down and doesn't have the commercials and all that sort of stuff. But everything's quicker. Even with the stuff that we're seeing, it's not like today where, you know, every fight gets a 5-minute video package before the fight and everyone's like, yeah, we get it. You know, we're already watching. It's okay.
Yeah. Joe Lauzon making his walk now. Oh, wow, he's got Rudy Valentino on his corner. That's BJ Penn's longtime corner, at least of this era, some of his best lightweight run with that guy. I know they were saying in the broadcast before this fight that he trained out with BJ Penn. Joe Lauzon, of course, was on Tough. Was it Tough 5 or Tough 6? That was the lightweights with Penn and Pulver. But, yeah, that's where Joe Lauzon met BJ Penn, and they formed a friendship there. Joey Lauzon.
Top 5, because that was still probably the best Tough season of all time, and just in terms of how all the talent shook out. Nate, Gray Maynard,
Yep.
Lauzon.
It's one of the few ones I have on DVD back in my early fan days. I have like the first Ultimate Fighter and a DVD box set, and then I got Tough 5. I think those are it of the Toughs. But I've got like a bunch of like Rumble on the Rocks and old event. You know, I'm sure you have yours too, Brad.
Oh yeah, I've got. I mean, you don't need it anymore with all of this stuff being accessible digitally, but I've got a trunk. Oh, Frank Mir in the front row there. But I've got a trunk full of DVDs. I still need it for like the Dream and the Sengoku and stuff like that I've got in there, but don't need it for the UFC, Pride, Strike Force, all that kind of stuff.
How high are the Diaz brothers at this point? Because the fight's over, they probably cleared medicals. Like, because Nate already, after his fight with Kurt, he was just like, "I'm just fucking waking up, dog. I ain't even fucking know."
I would say they're at least 5,241 feet in elevation, and then some.
Yeah, Jeff Nowitzki nowhere to be seen to hand anybody T-shirts this era, folks.
Yep.
Oh, MMA Warehouse. We all probably bought something from there one time or the other. If you're an old school MMA fan, I'm sure.
How many of those companies are still in existence? Like Hayabusa.
Hayabusa was just starting about then. Like, I was actually surprised to see Caro and Hayabusa earlier because they were just starting about this time. At least in MMA, in the MMA space that I'm aware of.
Yeah, they started off as more of like a kickboxing kind of gear company, right?
Yeah. But I'm really not paid, but I really like their gear. They make actually really high quality gear, so I've always been a fan of them. But yeah, they came around a little later. That's why I was surprised to see some this early. One more round. That brand made some, I don't know about this, but I liked what they did for Kenny Florian when he fought Roger Huerta. They did the Bruce Lee jumpsuit for him. Remember that?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I never really got behind some of their implications, especially this weekend. It was all of the, the Jesus implications with their gear. But
did they do that?
This particular shirt, stay away from that. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Wow. Okay. I only remember him from the Kenny Florian stuff because I was a low key. I was a Kenny Florian fan. Speaking of BJ Penn, like I actually Kenny Florian was one of my early. Again, I was a tough noob, right? So he was one of my early favorite fighters because he was like the more everyman kind of nerdy technical guy. Which I wonder why Danton relates to that guy, huh? But yeah, I like me some Kenny Florian. Delagrati, there's the hat.
One guy really leaning over into the aisle there, getting in Kenny's face.
Love it.
And then idiots cheesing for the camera.
These are just like every stereotype of UFC fan you want to pick, folks.
Yeah.
I love it.
Barely a security guard in sight as well. Much less of a curated experience than today's UFC shows.
This is right around the time where I'm surprised his hat made it to the octagon, if you know what I'm talking about, speaking of security. Remember that became a thing, steal the fighter's hat?
Yes.
Like Machida got his, and it was like a comedic thing.
There
see
were a
some
couple
fighters
guys
run
that
out like
just
this?
ended up getting like clipped in the head, and yeah, it was
Some
anything
fighters knew it
goes
was
back
coming, and they would
then.
just run out with their hand on their hat because they knew it was coming. They'd just be trying to make it through as fast as they can.
Like, I barely get paid any money. I can't afford another one of these. You think the company sent me this? I had to pay for this myself.
By the way, and anyone from Boston listening, those kind of Kangol like hats pitched forward. Delagrade's not the only one wearing it from Kenny's corner. That is such a Boston thing, by the way. Like even at like punk rock, hardcore punk rock shows, like Boston, they always had like noted one of the toughest scenes, right? Some of the toughest bands, and like when the Boston kids were in the pit, you would see them because they would look just like Kenny Florian's corner there. They all had those fucking caps on.
That's beside Delagrade. That's Keith, right? His brother.
Oh, possibly. I know one of his brothers passed. I don't think it was Keith though. That was the one that passed. That was the main one in his corner. Yeah, no, I don't think it was Keith. Keith, you could always hear through any broadcast. Come on, Kenny! Yeah. Come on!
I've got the volume down right now, but I can see his mouth moving, and I can hear it.
It's coming back, right? It's coming back.
So we've got the. They should have had a tag team match here. You know, Keith and Dan could have tagged in, and see where we went.
That would have been great. Dan Lauzon reminds me of like a character from season 2 of The Wire. Yeah, it's like the dock worker, Sabaka.
The docks, yeah.
Yeah, in the docks. But BJ and Tough 5 or Tough 6 or whatever I remember, or 5 or whatever it was. I remember going, man, I can't listen to this guy Corner if I want to be a fan of his, because he was so annoying to listen to Corner. Be first, be first, be first. Every episode, be first. Sorry, folks. Lightweights just happen to have that impression voice.
Yeah. He's certainly got his tropes that he likes to stick to.
You remember that, yeah. I remember watching him corner
no
Pat Healy.
Sarah, though.
I remember watching BJ corner Pat Healy at a Pearl at the Palms event, which I liked that venue. It was really intimate, where they had the tough finales. It was a Strike Force fight, though, and Rousey Bud or somebody headlined it. But yeah, I was just like, I got flashbacks from Tough 5 all over again. It was BJ again. Be first, Pat! Be first! Be first, Pat!
Every once in a while, my wife and I will still say to each other, use the foot stomps, Drago, from Matt Serra's cornering.
Oh, is that Cell? Pete Drago Cell?
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
That's tremendous stuff.
That is great. They're announcing Kenny
All right,
Florian
so,
right now.
Yeah, coming into this one, what did we have? Kenny had already fought for the lightweight title, obviously.
Shark Samurai Kenny.
And then was trying to work his way back up. He had won 3 fights. After that, the title fight loss, Mishima, Alvin Robinson, and Dean Thomas. Dunkanosuke Mishima.
That's right,
I
yeah.
believe.
Great shouts here. Take me back through memory lane. Herb Dean giving him the final instructions right now. Fist bump.
And Lauzon, man, you have to scroll a long way in his career. That man has had a lot of fights.
Yes.
But this was only like his.
This was a step up.
He had a couple of easy wins coming off of Tough. Brandon Melendez and Jason Reinhardt.
Wow.
One of those fellas with the incredibly inflated Midwest records back in the day.
Yeah, I remember Jason Reinhardt. I know he would have, if I did my Southpaw reports back then, he would have at least been 1-0 beating Pulver. But he's got a Southpaw in front of him, Kenny. Not looking for his jab, which is classic, even of today. Nice takedown by Joe.
Lauzon starting out like a house on fire, as he always does.
Yep. God, so aggressive.
Muscling Kenny to the ground, and there are those elbows. A couple warnings for back of the head, I think.
It was right on the. It's right on the.
Complain that it's not back of the head, even though he's got a cut literally on the back of his head.
Yep, and now blood. Joe just rubbed the blood, smeared the blood on the scalp, so now you can't really see where it's coming from. There's just big smudges of blood. Kenny and those elbows. Of course, Kenny Florian was known for those elbows since that aforementioned title attempt against Sean Shirk. The samurai suit, back when the UFC would let you culturally appropriate. Why'd you go so woke, UFC?
Ooh, nice body kick from Kenny there. But, oof.
Southpaw, baby.
Kenny had a chin on him because
he did.
Joe landed a nice one in that exchange, but these guys are just all over the this is kind of typical, less technical than the lightweights or the bantamweights that we see these days, but these dudes are just kind of all over the place.
I remember watching Kenny Florian's swing bout versus Alvin Robinson. It came right after an Anderson Silva, I think, Nate Marquardt fight. And back when they had swing bouts on, I was like, "Oh, the skinny guy's gonna get wrecked." And I was like, "You want to make a bet? Want to make a bet?" Like, and like not for real money or anything. But she's like, "Yeah." I'm like, all right, I'll take the scrawny guy. She's like, "I'll take the muscular guy over there." And I'm like, "Okay." And then Kenny whooped on him and stuff. He's like, "I finished fights." That was that fight, folks. But right now, he is defending a takedown from Lauzon. Sprawl shorts versus sprawl shorts. I spy Tracy Lee in the background taking photographs.
A lot of stuff here. I think. Remember, folks, main events back in this day were only 3 rounds as well. This
Yes.
Not scheduled for 5. But I think a lot of what Kenny's doing here is making Lauzon work for stuff. Because even that body lock takedown, there were a couple of attempts before he actually got there, and you could see that Lauzon exerted a lot to get it.
Yep, and they're at elevation. And Lauzon, I don't think, came out early where Kenny did in all the pre-fight footage. He was came out 3 weeks in advance, which is arguably still not enough, but, it's better than nothing.
At least you know kind of what to expect, even if you can't fully prepare your body. You can,
Verdun Velasquez was a classic. One guy getting out there early. Change the tempo. Oh, Lauzon almost stepping over like he wants a knee bar, then decides to elbow. That's pretty cool. He just keeps his weight on Kenny's chest to keep him kind of pinned down there.
Classic,
and then he sits off.
Ken Shamrock move there. Sitting across for the knee bar.
Oh, yeah. That's right.
Heel hook.
A little bit of leg play. Oh. And they're back up.
Lauzon starting to slow already. 4 minutes into the first round.
Maybe that should be a top five first round fighters.
Oh, that'd be a good one.
Yeah. Get everybody from Lauzon, Penn, Amir Khani.
Trying to think of. I have to put some thought into it, but there's certainly some options there.
Sure.
Back to the leg locks for Lauzon. He obviously thought he had something that Florian wasn't prepared for, but could also be the get tired, get desperate point for him.
Yeah, he was already giving up position and surrendering position. I missed that, or forgot about that, I should say. It's been forever since I've watched this fight, so.
Oh, nothing between rounds. We're right to start of round 2 here, folks.
They're both actually taking decent breaths there too, just to tell you the elevation of the effect on the fighters. And Kenny even kind of looked a little labored, and even just coming out in the beginning, just a little bit, slightly getting that kick up. Lauzon definitely trying to take the beats to get a breather for a second.
Yeah. He looks like the second round started as quick for him as it did for us.
Yes. Kenny mixes. He does always as a nice 2 body, and then comes up 3 to the hook to the head. Takedown for Kenny.
Easy takedown. Yeah. Have to
See,
take
that Versa
some,
Climbers patch got sewed on late, that sponsor. Gets to mount. Gets to mount early. Yeah, not much resistance from Joe. Kind of like we saw toward the end of the first round. Brad was portending.
smart from not just throwing for the sake of throwing, actually looking for spots here.
I love that you can, by the way, there's no red or blue tape. You notice that, Brad? There's like really shitty Home Depot painter's tape that they wrote Colorado Commission on. You see that? It's so ghetto looking. Love it. Little details. I'm sorry. I love it. Usually they make them sign the wraps, folks, not the outside of the fucking glove. Yeah. Jesus Christ.
The fighters don't really decide what gloves they use.
Yeah. Kenny Florian pounding away.
Did you notice that because the tape that was starting to hang off from Florian's left glove there?
Yeah, exactly true. Yep. You know, I think maybe ground stuff maybe is harder for all refs, but one thing I did a common thread about bad stoppages, Brad, was that Herb Dean, not only is he pretty prevalent in some of the worst ones, they're all ground and pound ones, and I'm getting like, I'm glad it wasn't Weidman Rockhold levels, but you could almost see how you know, he thinks that Weidman Rockhold situation was normal, and like you just let somebody pound away for a round or so.
Yeah, I mean, Kenny's trying to go for the, well, maybe not trying to go for the mercy arm triangle here. Also something you didn't really see a lot of the time in MMA at this point, but when you see a guy not be able to stop his opponent from getting to mount and getting, you know, dominant shots off 5 or 6 times in a row, it's probably a pretty good indication there's not a lot left there.
Yeah, I wonder if Rogan is recommending the R choke at this point of the fight. Sorry. Herb Dean warning him. Herb Dean seems to be on top of it. You know, it's pretty much. Yeah. You knew where this was going to be going 2 minutes ago.
Not sure what else you need to see at this point.
Yeah. Rogan's like, Lauzon's turning. I'm like, yeah.
Also kind of surprised that Kenny didn't just like resort to elbows. Drop a couple elbows in there, and there you go.
The way we were conditioned where it wasn't that great either. Like Rogan was, I just turned the volume to see what Rogan was saying at the very end there, and he goes, he's still defending himself, like he's still making a case for Lauzon. Rogan is at that point. Like 3 minutes, the third straight minute of mounted elbows and punches to the face.
He's not just letting him hit himself square in the face. He must still be in it at this point.
I know it's that commentator thing where you want to be fair to the other fighter, and you also want to do that subtle work for the broadcast by like telling the viewer anything can happen at any time. Stay tuned. But it just, you know, broadcasters thankfully have gotten better about being more aware of what's a good and warranted stoppage and what is not. You know.
Yeah, it also helps when you've got like a little bit more of a true play-by-play broadcaster like Anik in the booth, as opposed to Goldie just letting Rogan say whatever he wants.
Something I noticed, by the way, after going through and watching Anderson Silva fights, which are all main events, right? And I said Joe Silva comes in and shakes their hands. I noticed Joe Silva at the end of the main event, he's got his fucking messenger bag on, like he's ready to get the fuck out of there. It's like he's got the first flight out. He's already over this shit. We're not even near any Fox deal. He's just like, all right, yeah, good job. And he's already getting the fuck out of there. If you look when he's shaking hands, he's got his messenger bag. He's ready to go to the airport.
Oh, jeez. What a guy.
Say what you will about human being. Yeah, say what you will about how miserable he is and how ruthless he was toward the fighters. There is something about going in there and giving the fighters respect and praise and the genuineness about his fandom in that respect when you watch him in this kind of footage that I miss. I don't know what it is about that.
Well, I think I saw Ratner in the back somewhere. Yeah.
Like with the card formats we're getting of today, not to timestamp it, Brad. Like I don't know how much the matchmakers of today are even paying attention, to be honest. You know.
I don't know how much a lot of people are paying attention to what's going on these days.
Exactly.
A little bit different than back then. Anybody that was interested in MMA was watching this at the time. I think this did like 1.5 million viewers on Spike, which pretty damn big number considering the number of people that had Spike available. But a very nice performance from Kenny, and you saw flashes from Lauzon of what he would become and not become in the future.
And these early fight nights, obviously, they helped shape the fight nights to come, but they really did. I mean, even the one before this, not as heavily advertised, Florian versus Thomas one it wasn't it was probably a 2-hour one. It wasn't the first 3-hour like this one was, folks, at least per their original broadcast. But I remember like on my way home from the valet asking like buddies who watched MMA, going, "Hey, you gonna go catch Florian Thomas?" Like it was a point that where programs everything wasn't Insta stream, so there was still such thing as appointment television. But this was also a point where fight nights were becoming appointment television, right, Brad? Does that make sense?
Yep. Yeah, I mean, you look at the first couple fight nights, and it was like, I don't know, Nate Marquardt against somebody that 90% of people today wouldn't recognize the name at all. And then they got to the point where they would build through tough, as we mentioned earlier, and it was really like, I want to watch that guy fight. I know who that is. Maybe he's not a pay-per-view level fighter at this point, but I will certainly tune in and watch them because, as we saw with this card, they tended to go more in the favor of exciting finishers as opposed to just guys being put on the card to fill a card.
They're doing the old school outro. What do they think? Great, I'm sorry. You know what I'm talking about, Brad?
The highlights for the Irv and Alexander fight were longer than the fight itself.
They showed a funny guy, looked like the bad guy from Breaking Bad, giving a thumbs up, which was funny, but they didn't show the dudes doing the. Oh yeah, that is a young Ariani. You're right. They haven't shown, at least yet, the dudes doing the big fists. That was hilarious. I'm gonna go back and watch that later. I didn't know it was this event. Oh, this event just became greater.
They were just on the left side of the screen. They were.
Let's see. It's still going. The post-fight package highlights still going, and we'll get out of here shortly after, folks. I just want to wrap up the very end seconds here. They're on the main event now. Let's see.
Inside the octagon.
So you guys want to know? I'm not. I was mouthing something. Thankfully, if it wasn't cognitive. Yeah, that was great. Wow. All right. So I always reference this as one of my favorite UFC Fight Nights ever, just because of nostalgia's sake. And as we go through this, it may in fact move down the list. I don't think I can ever have one, much less have one for you guys right now. But does this hold up? Does it hold up to today? Does it hold up to your standards, Brad? Does it hold up to mine? I will say it held up to mine. It still holds up into that AA plus category for me, between the Rogan R words and the crowd stuff aside, to the actual action. Where does it hold for you, Brad?
I'd still give that a solid A. I think that it was certainly helped by the fact that, as we talked throughout the card, it was 15 years ago, but there were guys showing some modern aspects of MMA. It wasn't where the sport is now, but watching it and going back and watching it after, watching a card last night, it doesn't feel out of place. You go back and watch some of these cards and you're just like, ooh, that's like, why are you doing that? Why is that happening? How is that working? You didn't get a whole lot of that in this card. It didn't have all of the modern metas or whatever you want to call them, but it had enough of it. It had quality fighters that I think it definitely holds up.
Sure. I mean, you have, the era where judo and Greco was considered the best because it was clinch, showing that could be outdated and hurt you if you're facing a Muay Thai guy who throws knees, right? And not just a Muay Thai guy in Alves, but he kind of has brought a second coming to that Muay Thai striking, if you will, than, since, Pedro Hizo, as far as, the leg kicks, the heavy striking. There wasn't a lot of good high-level strikers in the UFC at that point. And not that Alves was a K1 striker or anything. I'm not saying that, but as far as his contemporaries, he definitely brought something different that other fighters would aspire to. And, moving away from clinch wrestling, we saw more collegiate folk-style wrestling with Maynard and Edgar. Not even just seeing folk-style wrestling, which we did see, but seeing that even that can get shut down and it can become, down to who's the better boxer or size and weight cutting. These things really do matter. So there was a lot of these examples on this card.
And then just some outright fun, like Rumble Johnson murdering a man.
Yeah, shout out to Capoza, who I believe said legend still has it. Tommy Spears is still sleeping against the cage in the Pepsi Center if you go late at night. just R.I.P.
If you stand in the right place, there's just a trickle of blood coming down from the ceiling.
By the way, I thought I saw a Sega video game spot somewhere in there just to show you, how long ago this was, folks. They were at
Dreamcast?
I don't know.
Was Dreamcast even a thing then?
It was a
Sega CD?
It was something for Sega. It was an exclusive for Sega, and I'm like, what are they even talking about? I'm like, wow. Must have been the last of its kind, but still, just as another point, how long ago this was, and shouts, man. Joe Lauzon, I don't know if he's still active at the time of this recording, but he's doing well. I hope his family's doing well. Kenny's doing well, and we're doing well, man.
One of the few who have gotten out of MMA and still been able to make something of himself. So you always like to see that in
Absolutely.
This sport specifically.
Absolutely. Shouts to Ken Flo and the rest in kind. This was really fun, Brad. I hope you had a good time doing this, man. I had a good time doing it with you. It's definitely an easy lift. It doesn't feel like work at all,
No, fun to go back and watch this, and it's not one of those cards that I watched it. I've watched it since it happened, but I probably haven't seen this in 7-8 years. So a lot of this stuff felt fresh again. So very much enjoyed it.
Nice.
Anytime you want to do this again, let me know, and I'd be happy to jump back on, as long as it's a good card or a really, really bad card.
Yeah, I know what you mean. I definitely don't want to fall into, shout out to the MMA Depressed, Zane Simon and folk. I don't want to fall into that territory. So I'm going to go, at least for right now, with cool ones. I'm only doing these one a month. I have to write one of these events a month. So this is kind of bonus for the articles I got to write up for Junkie. And I'll probably link this video into the article like I do with my top fives. So this is a way for me to mix business with pleasure, kind of a way for me to do my work homework and drag you along for the ride, or someone along for the ride, the viewers. But the next one I was thinking of doing, Brad, was... And the way I'm going to bill it, most violent fight night card ever. And word on the street is people like Joe Silva and other brass said that UFC Fight Night for the Troops 2, Fight for the Troops 2, may be that card. We may or may not have the first shin break on that card. We may or may not have Killer B. Saunders making a former Navy SEAL's face look like he got stung by a bunch of knees with a Muay Thai clench. We may or may not have, Yoshida getting knocked out twice in one fight. There's a lot of stuff, we may or may not have a Steve Cantwell revisitation and him breaking some bones. It was a really violent card. Brad, you know what I'm talking about?
I very much know what you're talking about.
I'm going to stop there. I don't want to do any spoilers because there's much more. That's crazy.
Those ones, it was an interesting atmosphere. I'm as a Canadian, I'm not one for the military fetishization that happens a lot.
Sure, right,
but
yeah.
it was an interesting atmosphere, in the hangars and all that stuff that they did. So
there's that too. You're right. I forgot about that. There is that too. But just the violence of the card, that one next, if that tickles your fancy, that sounds like something you want to party with, Brad, you let me know.
All
right, folks. Thanks for joining us. I want to wrap this up. Be kind to Brad's time. He's way ahead of me here. It's a school night for everybody. So thanks. Hope you enjoyed this.
Tomorrow.
Okay, good. There we go. Live chat will be down when this video is down, but the comments are open for feedback. If you like these, any things you want going forward, I'll try to get production to the Wayback Machine, my version of it. #TM. we'll get all that brushed up more. But this was really fun. Thank you, Brad. Thank you, everybody. And until next time, protect your neck.